Hey, everybody, welcome to Contra Talk. My name is Richard Henry, and this is the podcast where we talk about things that matter. We're going to be talking about something that matters a lot, the COVID restrictions and other things that happened in 2020 and 2021, particularly with Grace Community Church and churches in Canada. We're talking to the director, Shannon Halliday. He's my guest today. We're going to be talking about what brought him to the documentary, how he did it, and kind of just the ins and outs of that and the reception therein. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Shannon Halliday, welcome to the show, brother. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
I'm doing great. I've been out in LA, and the weather's starting to finally cool off. So it's starting to get nice again and not so sweaty.
Good. Yeah, I don't. There were times. It's been a while, but I used to live, of course, in LA as well, and there were times that I would actually get tired of the sun, which is pretty funny. I would tell that to people, and they're like. So I do like the seasons. I do like they are rather erratic.
Erratic.
There we go.
Yeah.
They can be here, but it's nice. So
yeah.
Thanks for taking some time. I know you're a busy guy, and you've been on lots of different podcasts, and you're got some conferences you've done, and promoting the film and things, which is great. I saw the film, The Essential Church. Why don't you just talk a little bit about who you are? You're a California native. You're at MacArthur's Church now. What your role is there, and just kind of what led up to this film. And we'll just kind of take it from there.
Yeah. I became a Christian at Grace Community Church many moons ago. I moved up to LA from San Diego for acting.
Okay.
And so that's all I was focused on. And I had thought I was a Christian, but a friend invited me to Grace Community Church and into his Bible study. And after a while, I realized it just eventually soaked in. I didn't have that epiphany moment where I'm like, I'm a Christian now because, I prayed the prayer and then I had this moment, and I confessed my sin. It was this gradual thing that I realized I'm a Christian now. And I have conviction over my sin, and I want to read God's word, and I'm understanding it. And I'm now going to submit my life to Christ as my king, and everything's going to run through that, and that wasn't the case before. I just basically added Christ to my life. He wasn't like the master of my life. So, so then everything changed after that. And then I just started getting plugged in at Grace. But I still had a desire to not to act, but to make films. And so I still stayed focused on that. And as a Christian, that's a strange journey. It's different than somebody who's not a believer in Hollywood. So there it was a different kind of journey for sure. But I just kept, serving at Grace and pursuing my career. And right around the lockdowns, when that chaos started, I was working for a studio inside a huge marketing firm that had thousands of businesses, and I was the head writer moving into creative director. And
Nice.
we were just making, small pithy commercials that on the internet kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. It was kind of a dream job. I had security and good insurance because it was working for a company, because companies are now realizing they need storytellers, and that there's an art to that, and that you can really screw that up if you don't do it right. And people think they're storytellers, but they're actually not. And they wonder why their commercials or their promos or whatever are so lacking compared to what they see in the professional world. So they're actually starting to hire storytellers inside the corporate world to work for them full time. So I was one of those people, and I loved it. It was a good job, and I was helping out at Grace here and there. I was helping oversee the story for Adventure Club, which is like an Awana replacement. We stopped doing Awana, and we designed our own program, and they called it Adventure Club, but they didn't have an adventure. So I was overseeing like a fun story for that curriculum. So that's how I had connections at the time. and was working part-time for the church, just kind of like a side hustle slash ministry. And when the lockdowns happened, they were thinking about doing more media. And in particular, Jacob Hoffman was looking more into that. And he wanted to hire me as a creative director to kind of take
Mhm.
over some projects, our more narrative based projects. And I said no, I wasn't interested in that. I had a good job. I don't think that was a good career move. Going and working
Mhm.
for your church doesn't seem. I mean, I love that I did it, and I love my church, but at the time, I was like, that doesn't seem like a good career move. It just doesn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
So anyway, I said no, and then about a month later, my heart changed. I became very unhappy with my situation at my work. And the Lord
Mm.
made that apparent. And then they asked me again, "Do you want to come on and take this on?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And which is kind of risky, but I'm kind of a risk taker. And I went for it. And so I came on, and then right around when I came on, we were talking about what projects we were doing, and I was focused on this kids project at the time, but what was going to be our big project, and it was obvious that it should be. It was obvious to all of us it should be this documentary about what just happened and what's happening with COVID, because we
Yeah.
were just at the tail end of our legal battle at that point. I think we were still technically in our legal battle, and then we started talking about we need to, make a documentary about this. So Jacob told some of the elders, "Hey, what about doing a documentary on this about what happened at the
Mhm.
church?" And they said, "Sure, get together a pitch." So I got together a pitch. And I'll just say this, that one reason that really motivated us to do the documentary, which was kind of your question, was that there tons of people left Grace Community Church because we opened. They were
Yeah.
very upset
I
that we
heard that, yeah.
opened, and they thought John MacArthur had gone off the rails, that he is now super political, and that's
Mhm.
not the kind of church they want to be in. And a ton of people left. And when those people were leaving, there were people that wanted to tell them what was going on, but there's stuff that's happening in the elders meeting that and in the legal battle that you couldn't talk about publicly. Um,
Mm.
and you couldn't adequately do it. It was hard to like convey to them like what exactly went on. And so making a documentary for them essentially, that they would watch this and just tell the story and then let them do what they want with it. So anyways, I pitched the story to um, Dr. MacArthur and a couple other elders, and one of the things that I wanted to put in it was the church history, because it really needed to be not about Grace Church but about the church. And I wanted to do that by showing the Canadians, which kind of represents our global perspective presently, and then that we're looking past, that we're looking to the past, looking back at church history, and all of this will give it a transcendent element that hopefully 20 years from today, people will still watch it and it will make sense and it will apply, because we did it that way. So I wanted to give it a transcendent quality. So, and
Mhm.
it was as I researched this, I realized that this is a conflict that has been reoccurring over and over and over again throughout history, let alone within,
Yeah.
the true stories of the Bible, starting with
Right.
Exodus. I don't think I'll ever look at Exodus the same way as I did before the lockdowns.
Serious.
Yeah, so, that's all super interesting, and so I wanted to make sure that that was a part of it, and that's what I
Yeah.
pitched to them. They liked it. And the other thing I pitched to them, which was I honestly was concerned about this, was, "Hey, we need to be transparent. We need to pull back the curtain and kinda show our division, our evolution on this, that not everybody had the right answers right away, that some people had to figure things out, and that there were some people that never, didn't agree, and there were
Mhm.
casualties, and we should just open up and show that in the
Mhm.
documentary. That's gonna be way more compelling to show the protagonist, which is the church, and its struggles internally, um,
Mhm.
and showing that in the story is going to be much more interesting. So I was concerned when I pitched that they were going to say no to that, but they did not.
Hmm.
And I remember what
Yes.
Dr. MacArthur said. He leaned back and he said, "Yeah, just don't make our people look like second-class citizens in the church. So
Hmm.
we have to find a way to do it without, we got to keep them anonymous, and that we don't just bash
Hmm.
them, because some of those
Right.
people didn't leave and they still go to our church,
Yeah.
um, who may still disagree with, the exact statement, but anyways, so that's what I pitched to them, and they greenlit that, and they said, "Okay, let's do it."
Yeah.
And we were off to the races.
That's great. How long did it take you overall to film and compile everything together? Obviously, a documentary is a little different than a regular
Yeah.
fictional feature length film.
Yeah.
How does that?
So
How long did that work?
it was 2 years, which is short.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was kind of a
For a
crazy
documentary, usually.
deadline. Yeah, for a documentary. I would prefer to have 3 to 5 years,
Mm.
but at least
Wow.
3 years. But it was, yeah, 2 years. I wrote a very loose script. The only thing that probably wasn't super loose was the church history stuff, because I
Yeah.
researched that and then just wrote a screenplay for those scenes. And
Oh,
I
okay.
had an idea of where I wanted to put them. And I researched the story. I did pre-interviews, so I kind of had an idea, and I started wrapping my mind around the story so that I could understand. Okay, if I was writing a screenplay, which is what I do, I don't. This is my first documentary.
Okay.
But the principles are the same. The story principles are the same. You're asking yourself the same questions, but I need to understand the story to understand. Is this kind of where my first act ends, and the protagonist will understand its goal to move us now into the second act, and we're onto our movement towards that goal and establishing
Hmm.
the forces against it. So understanding all that, so I could ask questions that would accent those points in the story. But beyond that, there was a lot of details I didn't know still, and that I found out during the interview. So it's like you write the script, and then you're writing it again as you shoot it, and then you write it a third time as you're editing it.
Yeah.
And a lot of things changed, but not. But surprisingly, the bones and the major plot points, especially church history and some of the legal battle stuff, was exactly how I intended it at the beginning.
That's great. Yeah, documentaries definitely can be um, challenging. I've
Yeah.
heard anyway. It's funny you said that you wanted to be an actor. That was my story way back when too.
Oh, really?
um, and I was not a Christian either.
Uh,
Hold on. I'm sorry. We'll have to.
okay. Cookies. The cookies are coming.
Be challenging, and at least I've heard. I've never worked on one, but knowing, when you write a film, hey, we're going to do this, we'll shoot it here, we'll do this, this is what the characters will do, et cetera, et cetera. I can imagine a feature film almost is generally easier than a documentary in some respect. What would you disagree with that, or do you think that's more accurate, or maybe it just depends on the subject matter?
Yeah, I would say that it's easier in respects of where you're going exactly, because you have a
Hmm.
screenplay that you should have like rewritten and should be super tight, and you
Hmm.
understand where you're going and why you're doing it. Whereas in a
Hmm.
documentary, you think you understand that and you've done your best, but at the same time, you're scared. You're always scared to death that you're not going to shoot enough, that you're not going to get the right scenes, that you're not going to ask enough questions. And so when we were in Scotland, I'm like, let's shoot this. I was just trying to. I had my shots, and then I added shots because I wanted to try to
Hmm.
get as much as I can to work with. You know,
Yeah.
so there's that respect that's difficult. The easier part with the documentary is, depending on the reenactments, is I'm sitting a person down, and especially the style in which I shot this, I was dedicated to not cutting from the A cam. You notice I didn't cut to a B cam or a C cam.
Hmm.
Eh, I think that some documentaries do that really well, but a lot of times I'm just annoyed by it because I'm like, "Why am I looking at this guy's ear?" Like, I wanna make a
Right.
connection with this person who's telling me a story, and you're making me look at his ear.
Hmm.
It's, like, weird. I wanna see his eyes. And I wanted to stay focused on the face because the face was such a controversial thing. So subconsciously, I just wanted to make just kinda how we're framed up here, I just kinda wanted it centered up and then
Mhm.
I stay true and pure to that, and I don't cut to any other camera. So in a way, that made it easier because we have to light for that and that alone,
Right.
and I don't have to
Just
light a
camera
bunch
A,
of
yeah.
different angles and worry about that. So in that respect, it's easier. Whereas in a script, you have multiple angles, you have to constantly move the lights, and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which I didn't have to do for the interviews, obviously.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a good point. Um, so you guys went to Scotland then. Did you do interviews besides Los Angeles? Obviously, you talked to um, several of the elders and of course MacArthur. And during the whole process, did you guys travel anywhere else besides those two places? I mean, well, Canada. Did you go to Canada at
we
all?
went to Canada. So we went to
Okay.
Canada, we went to Scotland, we went to London,
Okay.
because Gary Brady, who was my interviewee, we filmed that in Grace Life London Church.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I've heard of that church. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so he's a Welshman who wrote a book called 1662, the Great Ejection, or Great Ejection
Mm,
1662. Anyway, so um, I just looked him up. I read his book for research, and I'm like, I wonder if this
mhm.
guy, if I can get a hold of him. Then I just Googled him, and I saw a number, and I'm like, I'm just going to call that number, and he answered. I was like, this is crazy.
The
And
internet. You
I
gotta
said, hey,
love the
you want
internet. That's
to
right.
my documentary? He said, sure. So
Nice.
anyway, we went to London and interviewed him. We had Ian Hamilton in Edinburgh, technically
Mhm.
Inverness. And then we shot a bunch of stuff from Glencoe to Edinburgh, where Greyfriars is. I don't know if you've ever been to Edinburgh in Scotland. Um,
No, not been to Scotland before. No,
yeah, it's amazing if you ever get a chance. I mean, the
I
history
bet.
there is crazy. It's amazing. Um, so then we went to Canada. We technically went to Stanford as well. That's where we interviewed Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya, our epidemiologists.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot they were in there. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we went to the Stanford University and filmed that on campus in their offices, which was cool at the
Nice.
Hoover Institute. And then we went to Atlanta for the Sean Kaufman interviews. He's the guy who has that just huge resume. He worked for the CDC,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And so yeah, so Atlanta, Stanford, Canada, London, Scotland, and then Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And San Diego,
Nice.
technically. But our attorneys are in San Diego,
Oh, okay.
not Jenna
Gotcha.
Ellis, but
Okay.
local attorneys that covered us.
Gotcha. No, I mean, overall, I mean, it was, like I said, I enjoyed it. I saw it in the theater.
Nice.
One thing that was so pro, and then I don't know if a con or just maybe a question,
Yeah,
is like you said, the church history stuff. And I guess they were renderings, right? Like, was it CG with
it
the kind
was.
of
Yeah,
the statues,
yeah,
Bunyan and the two Margarets and Jenny
yeah,
Geddes and others. Um, those were great. Sometimes, well, I'll get that in a second. What made, because most of it was like the Scottish Reformation, right? I mean, not everything, of course, but what made you want to focus just on that versus other parts of church history? Was there
yeah.
any
So
particular thing?
one particular thing is, um, w- what kind of introduced me to that was the Jenny Getty story, which happened on
Hmm.
July 23rd.
I love that story.
Yeah, and that was the same exact night, July 23rd, that our elders voted to open back up the church.
Really? Well,
Yeah, and so I showed that with the dates and the rolling dates.
that's right. Yeah,
I didn't have
that's
somebody
right.
say it. I wanted to just kinda
Hmm.
show it, and I thought that would be more powerful, and that's when we come out of
Yeah.
our world, and we go up into the sky, and then we come into the black space, is what we were calling it, where the chair is
Hmm.
still suspended in the air that she had thrown,
Hmm.
and we finish her story, which took place July 23rd, 1637. Exactly, I don't know I don't know the math on that. Whatever that is, 350 years,
Hmm.
whatever that is, exactly anniversary to that point. So that was like, okay, that connects in a very uncanny way with our story. And it was brought up on that day. Hey, Jenny Geddes threw her chair this day when they were voting. They talked about it. So John MacArthur brought it up. So that was the connection there. And then it was like, okay, so why was she throwing her chair? Why does that connect so well with us? She was throwing her chair because the state was saying, we're going to regulate what churches do. And
Mhm.
that was when the Dean of Edinburgh showed up on that day with the Book of Common Prayer that was designed for them to submit to and do their services according to that.
Mhm.
And, she threw her chair saying, I will not do that. I will
Mhm.
not have you regulate church the way you want to regulate it. And I know there's some other theological aspects to that, and the fact that the state was essentially the Catholic Church at that time,
Mhm.
or the king was Catholic. But regardless, it was still the state telling the church, "You're going to do church this way," and that's not
Mhm.
their place to do that. So and she was throwing her chair at them, and through that, then another uncanny thing happened. Is 6 months later in 1638, they all came together and signed a statement. They wrote out their beliefs theologically, biblically, why they are making the stand that they're making against the state, the king, and they all signed it. We did the same thing, not nationally, but our church, we wrote a statement. The elders signed it, and we sent it out nationally for others to sign in solidarity, which is essentially what they
Mhm.
did. And that's called the National Covenant. Okay. So those are really parallels. So I saw those as parallels to our story. They were also
Mhm.
brought up in our statement. So if you read our statement, Christ not Caesar, they reference these points in history. They reference the Covenanters, that was the beginning of the Covenanters. They made a covenant and they became known as the Covenanters because of the national covenant that they made. And they
Right.
kept that stand for the next century, and suffered huge persecution for it.
Mhm.
Um, so those are the major connections. Our statement connects to it, and the dates connect to it as far as when we voted. And the national covenant connects with our statement in the sense that we're kind of doing the same thing in the same vein. And history is
Mhm.
kind of repeating itself. Now I understand the context is different, but at the core of it, it's still the same motives. The state doesn't have any jurisdiction in the church to just tell
Right.
us how we're supposed to worship and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so those are the connections, and then the great ejection was also brought up in our statement. So I just used our statement. That's what our elders wrote down, and they referenced those
Mhm.
points in history. So that's why I focused on those points of histories, because now it's motivated. I'm motivated to
Yeah.
go and look at those points because presently that's what our elders, camped out on, and they wrote it
Yeah.
down in the statement. So that's essentially why.
Gotcha. 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 I would say the only thing that I had a critique, not like you necessarily asked or whatever,
Yeah.
but
But I said you
was
could. So if people are watching this,
you did.
they think that guy's such a jerk. I said, hey, it's okay. You can do
I'm gonna
that.
have him on
We
and
can
then
discuss it. I enjoy
bash his documentary.
it.
No, I mean, like I said, I really did enjoy it, and I mean, I love film in general, and I like documentaries. I think even more so the more I progress in Christ,
Yeah.
because a lot of times I'm just like, this is just fake nonsense. I don't need to watch this. Like,
Right.
I've seen this story 50 times before. I know it's gonna happen. This, the
Yeah.
girl, that guy, explosion.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
um, MacArthur gives the gospel toward the end. Maybe I don't know. You know probably better than me. Maybe minute, hour and 50, 55, 52. I don't know, something like that.
Hmm.
And I thought, praise God, this is so good. I can't believe I'm sitting here listening to MacArthur tell the gospel on this massive screen to, however many people were there. And then it kept going. And I was like, oh, all right. Because I was literally like, that's it. And then it kept going a little bit more. There was like two other times. It almost felt like, Return of the King. Not as long. But, that would be my only critique that I felt like, there's a whole nother thing. Okay. And it was just like, I think one
Yeah.
time I did look, I was like, is it past 2 hours? Not
Yeah.
like it's necessarily bad. And obviously you had so much to
Two
say,
hours and six
but
minutes,
two
I
hours and six
think,
minutes. Yeah. And
or two
again,
hours
it's
and
not,
1 minute,
wasn't,
something like that. With the credits, six
is it
minutes.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just toward the end, I felt,
You thought it was a
you just
little
kinda have
long.
that sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess. I
I
mean,
struggled with
I don't
that.
think it's long,
No, I
long
think
really, because like I
I think
said,
it's a
but
valid thing to bring up. Um, and I struggled with that. uh,
Mhm.
and at one point had it down to an hour and 50 minutes.
Mhm.
And then, you know, the more I looked at it, and I gave it to a couple other people to watch, and their critiques were, where's look, and I'm running out of time at this point. I'm given a deadline, right? I said
Yeah.
I would love to have another year. And
Yep.
maybe I could have
Yep.
massaged that a little bit more and figured out a way to get it under 2 hours and still get the things that I wanted to get. But I had to make decisions quickly. Not
Yep.
that I'm making excuses, but that was the context. Um,
Sure.
so, the clock is ticking like in a basketball game, and I just got to keep taking my shots until the game's over and just make sure I get his get a high score.
Yep.
Anyway, so I came to the conclusion that we needed people talking about how the church affected them, and that's I did kind of we did a like a Hail Mary, and all these
Mhm.
people zoomed in and told us their testimonies, and that's how I got the testimony of this guy who was with the alcoholism, and then he got saved at Tim Stevens Church because they stayed open, and he was about to kill
Mhm.
himself and all this stuff. So I'm like, that's that powerful stuff, and I wanted that to begin with. I wanted to interview more congregants.
Mhm.
I wanted to interview more people. I had on my list to go to, you know, um, Moscow, Idaho, because I know those guys were arrested.
Oh,
Doug
uh-huh. Yeah.
Wilson.
Right, right,
In
right.
fact, I was watching their Cross Politic the other day. You know that
Mhm.
show they got, and they were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the documentary, and they were he made a joke like, "You guys never called me. I never got that phone call. I could have been in this documentary." And I wanted to say, I had you on the list, but sorry, it just I ran out of time. There's so many.
You run out of time.
Yeah.
You really do, yeah.
Anyway, so um, and what do I cut? Do I cut the gospel? Because
Right.
I'm like, do I cut the? I'm not going to cut the gospel. And it says, well, okay, should I cut the great ejection? And then maybe I could cut the great ejection. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I got it to 2 hours. Um, I feel good about it. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking if I could get this 10 to 15 minutes shorter, I'd be really, really happy. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I felt that if I cut the 10 or 15 minutes, it would not have been as good with the stuff that you said, like Return of the King. It just kind of kept going a little bit. And I
Yeah.
was like, at the end of the day, when I look at both of those, I'd rather have Return of the King than not, because it's
Right.
it's more valuable at the end of the day. But if I had
Yeah.
more time, then maybe I would figure out the right combo to get it under 2 hours. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I don't have any regrets. I like the film. I like the way it turned out. And you learn from this and you move on to the next one. But I think that's a valid
Yeah.
critique.
What was the reception overall? I mean, is the church, both Grace, other churches, maybe secular people? Obviously, California is a bastion of conservatism and Christianity, of course. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it was received well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joking, right? But what's been the reception?
Yeah, it's been obviously in our camps, it's been really good and
Hmm.
even a little maybe at times overwhelming.
Hmm.
And then, I always say in the back of my mind, like, yeah, but maybe I'm in an echo chamber, and it's
Right.
of course these people are gonna like it and say all these good things about it. That doesn't mean that it's like this amazing thing, and you shouldn't necessarily believe all the hype. Um,
Hmm.
but it got great reviews from most people. I think what helps that too is because I think most people are not expecting a good film. In other words,
Hmm.
a film that where it was crafted, where somebody's caring about the actual art and craft of filmmaking, which at the end of
Hmm.
the day is storytelling, visual storytelling. You're dealing with the art and craft of that and caring about that. And I think in Christian media, um, that's not happening a whole lot. And so it stands out because of that.
That's a very nice way to put it. It's a very
Yeah.
nice way to put it. Not
So
happening a whole lot. It's happening more than it used to
yeah,
when we were kids for sure. But
yeah.
yeah.
So it
Okay.
it received it well. There are people who automatically didn't like it, but I noticed I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you call
Hmm.
it now. And those people, I noticed all the people that hated it didn't even see it. They
Hmm.
were just critiquing what they thought it was. and I was like, maybe you should go watch the film because I don't think we're talking. That's not the film I made. Um,
Right.
you know, and so I think most people liked it. I think people who don't care about theology, who just want to hear like, I think maybe they were expecting more Fauci bashing and more COVID statistics. And I would say that's in there to some degree, but not really as much as some people may have wanted. And I think there may have been some criticisms. Unchurched people who don't believe in God, are going to look at it and go, I mean, that's interesting, but I don't know if I care about that point of view because they don't care about theology or whatever. Um, so, um, but overall, I think people liked it, and the
Mm.
reviews have been good. And I mean, I can't believe we got a theatrical release. That was just kind of like,
Yeah.
hey, let's try that at the very end. We didn't plan for that from the beginning. And
Talk about that a little bit because I know um, that's just I think an exciting and intriguing thing probably for the average person. Like, how do you get like any like you guys are a church, right? It's Grace Community Church.
yeah,
It's Pastor MacArthur, right? You guys made the movie. Obviously, you raised money and got some support and producers and all that, like a normal studio, Warner Brothers or whatever. But how did that work? How did you guys get in the theater?
yeah, we made it, and then once we showed it to MacArthur and a few other elders like Chris Hamilton and Mark Sakevich. I think Nate
Hmm.
Buznitz was there. They were the first elders to see it, and they were blown out of their seats. I mean,
That's
MacArthur
good.
was
That's great.
like on the moon about it. He
Wow.
and I think he had some legitimate concerns, especially when we said it. I think it's going to be like 2 hours long, and he's like, I don't. Is that going to feel like 2 hours? Um,
Hmm.
and though it may have that length to it, like we were talking about it before, I would say that its saving grace is that it does not drag. It's not.
No, I wouldn't say that either.
Yeah, it may be like, oh, I was expecting it to end by now, but at the same time, you can't say, oh, this is so boring. I mean, it
Hmm.
moves, and so he loved it.
That's good.
And so once they loved it, then it was like, okay, well, we're going to try a theatrical release. You do it, do everything you can, push it out there.
Yeah.
Let's find a way.
Yeah.
And they would approve, like, hey, we're going to need X amount of dollars to hire this distribution company to take our film. And they're basically like, I don't know, bookies, or I don't know, not bookies, but middlemen basically that have
Yeah.
relationships with the theaters, and then they sell your movie to the theaters and convince them to give a screen. The crazy thing about it,
Gotcha.
it was right in the middle of Oppenheimer and Barbie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
no one wanted to give up their screens. And we were hoping to get 1,000 screens, which would have been crazy, but we still got
Hmm.
300. And
Yeah.
people weren't happy about that, but there was nothing we could do about it. And the reason it happened that way is because, again, we weren't planning from the beginning to have a theatrical release. Or honestly, we would be releasing it in a month, in October. That would be the time to release it. Not
Oh,
in the
really? Okay.
not in the middle of like the biggest season of movies every year, which is the summer blockbusters, right in the heart of it.
Right.
That was crazy.
Now,
And we still
what
made a
led to
profit
that?
on
Why?
that.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a
Yeah.
praise. So why not? Why didn't it wait until October then?
Because it was the ball was rolling, and I just locked the film for the elders to
Hmm.
watch. Just a couple weeks before that, we're talking, hey, I wonder if we could actually get this in the theater. Once the elders were on board with it, it's gangbusters. But our premiere
Yeah.
was already set for July 23rd because of the dates.
Gotcha.
Again, July 23rd, and it was on a
Right. Right.
Sunday. And
Right.
they're like, how is that? That's so great. It's on a Sunday. Our whole church can
Yeah.
see it. So we had been telling our church we're going to premiere this July 23rd. So it's kind of like at that point, you're not going to premiere it in July 23rd and not show it for 4 months to
Right.
everybody else. You're going to lose all that
Sure.
momentum. So it was kind of like,
Right.
we've already committed. We got to just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
So that's why we did it.
No, that's good. So does Grace have media, like a media thing, right? Like, is it called Grace Media? Is that
Yeah, they
correct?
have an app, Grace Media.
Okay.
And
And is it going to be on there as well? Someone like I'm sure people
eventually,
are saying, "Well, how can I see it? How can I see it?"
yeah,
That's where you
eventually
can
it'll be on
watch it
there.
then.
Right now, you can go to Salem. Is it
Okay.
Salem Now? I better look up the website so I can tell you, because they're gonna get mad at me. You're like, "You didn't even say the website." Let's see. Somebody texted it to me. Where is it? Uh, well, that's the problem with Slack, is it has so many threads, I don't even know where to find it. I wish they would just text it to me. So, if you
Well,
go to
I can
Salem,
put it in. I can
yeah,
put it in the description
yeah,
too
you'll
for
be able to
people. You
look it
can
up.
text
So
it to me
it's
after. Yeah.
I think it's called Salem Now.
Okay.
And you can digitally download that. So you can get instant gratification now. You don't have to buy the DVD or the Blu-ray if you want to just digitally download it and watch it. But
Okay.
but yeah, we have Blu-rays, we have DVDs. So if you go to essentialchurchmovie.com, then you can get all the information on that. You can buy a DVD or a Blu-ray. It was shot in 4K. It does look beautiful. So
Hmm.
if you wanted it in Blu-ray, it would be worth it. And it'll also have extra bonus features. So I have more interviews that didn't make the cut. For example, of Scott Atlas, our epidemiologist, and Jay Bhattacharya, and other government officials who
Yeah.
speak about things that didn't make the documentary and that are really interesting. So you'll get extra bonus features with the Blu-ray and DVD. But you can go to Salem now and download it and watch it digitally, rent it or buy
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. You have anything you're working on? So, are you working? You're working at the church then, doing. Forgive me.
No,
What's your role
yeah.
at Grace
So
now? Right now.
we have different media people. We have like a video team at our church, and then we have Grace Productions.
Hmm.
All I know is what I focus on is narrative based productions. So
Okay.
any kind of you know anything that involves story, writing a story and directing a story that is going to be pushed out into the public, and aren't like, I don't work on like promos for the church or things like that. I do
Hmm.
or for Shepherd's Conference or stuff like that. I just focus on storytelling, narrative storytelling. And right now I'm working on our kids show called Ranger Joe, or Adventures with Ranger Joe. So
Okay.
I'm working on that right now. That's like we got a third season. It's 12 episodes, probably 30
Nice.
minutes long each. And yeah, that will be being pushed out there probably. I don't know, we'll probably start marketing it towards the end of the year, and then filming
Okay.
it either at the end of the year or the beginning of next year, filming those 12 episodes, and then working on whatever our next project is. So yeah,
Yeah. Now, with that, is that Ranger Joe? Is that cartoon or live action then?
it's live action.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Nice.
it's that was like our COVID Sunday school, or our
Okay.
midweek program, kind of Sunday school slash midweek program for the kids, because when we were locked
Hmm.
down, the kids couldn't come to Sunday school. So they made this kind of Ranger Joe skit thing, and they
Hmm.
would write and direct them. I wasn't involved in it, really quickly, in a matter of a week, and they did like 20 of
Hmm.
them, for those weeks
Oh
that
wow.
we weren't meeting. So those are really
Yeah.
low budget, kind of like cut while you're shooting kind of thing, as quick as you can, and
Yeah.
put it together. And the kids loved those things, and the parents loved those. So when it ended,
That's
so
cool.
did that. But then we took the idea and said, well, okay, well, let's up our game on that. That's when I took over, and I was like, how can I make this more like a children's sitcom? And then I kind of like
Hmm.
stretched the demographic, because it was kind of just for tiny kids, little kids.
Hmm.
And then I was like, maybe we can have a story that little kids and maybe 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds would still be interested in watching the story, and parents wouldn't
Yeah.
be annoyed by it and be like, "Oh my gosh, we're watching this." That was
Lots
my
of loud
goal.
noises. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So in this third season, we're even taking another step. Hopefully, we'll see if we get the funds, but we're going to even have more production value. The stories are going to be, I think, even more fun and engrossing, but it'll still have a biblical lesson within it. So
Cool.
yeah.
And is that avail? Would that avail? Is that going to be available through the Grace Media app as well?
I would think so. It would
Okay.
probably be, I imagine we'll stretch out to YouTube as well, because a lot of
Oh,
people
okay.
don't have the app. This is my guess. I don't know. My
Hmm.
guess is we'll be on a YouTube channel, and people will probably watch it on YouTube, and then we'll probably advertise the app. And hey, if you want to go watch the rest of these, or you want to whatever, you can go download the app and watch it on your TV, because it can be on
Okay.
Apple TV or Android.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so if people want to download the Grace Media app, eventually the documentary will be on there too, and you can watch it on your TV if your Apple TV is hooked up to it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, brother. You have any closing thoughts or comments you want to share?
Yeah, I just, my hope is that this film will be used to fortify the church in this regard, and that it will challenge maybe people who are on the fence and who didn't really understand fully why, we did what we did and why it's important
Hmm.
that we would just be strengthened by this and fortified and used, and that people would hear the gospel and that,
Hmm.
and get saved. So, um, it's just a joy to put something out there that actually has eternal ramifications, and
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah. Praise God, brother. Well, I appreciate the time. Anybody, can they check you out? You said on Twitter, X. Is that a
Yeah,
good way to
I'm
connect
on.
with you?
Yeah, at SP Halliday is what I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I don't do
Okay.
a ton of tweeting, but when I do, it's usually something that has to do with something people should know. I'm not
Yeah.
like tweeting all the time or Xing. I don't
Yeah.
know how we're going to say that. Posting on X.
I think it's posting. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I guess it's posting. Yeah, I don't
Elon's
post a
probably guy.
ton,
I don't
but
know.
I post things that let people know what I'm working on. So if you want to
Hmm.
keep up to date with what I'm working on, at SP Halliday on Instagram and X.
Perfect. Well, Shannon, I appreciate it, brother. I really do. Thanks for taking the time, and hope this is helpful for everybody else.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Richard. It was my pleasure. It
Yeah.
was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Have a good day. Hey, I need you guys to stay outside until mommy comes home. Okay, you guys are way too loud. No, no, go outside. Yes, daddy. Okay. Sorry, usually doesn't always work. My wife had to she was dropping two of our daughters at two different places, and she had to get gas and then change the route, and so she's like, "Oh, I'll be home as soon as I can." So
No,
I'll
that's
cut
awesome.
that part out, obviously. Um,